Hey, what's ready? Welcome back to News Dose, and Xbox's 2026 lineup is already shaping up incredibly well, which includes a major title for the first half of 2026. Yeah, they could have a big title in a way rather soon, and it's not just that though, because a very exciting Game Pass game should be getting its re-reveal relatively soon as well. And then on top of that, the question of when they'll join the Switch 2 wave seems to have at least confirmed one game that's in development. So make sure to stick around because we got a lot to get into today, which includes also a Nintendo buyout because, yeah, that was a bit of a surprise for Thanksgiving. But first, if you celebrate, I do want to go and say I hope you had a great Thanksgiving. Also, I do want to go and thank my supporters on Patreon and on YouTube memberships. Thank you just so much for what you do, and you will receive this video through early access. Let's go and get right into things, though, starting off with Game Pass, because one of the more promising independent titles coming to the service has garnered a lot of excitement since its initial reveal being replaced. I mean, this game looks absolutely stunning with its gorgeous pixel art, but because it's so ambitious, it has unfortunately been impacted by multiple different delays. Well, it's starting to sound like its launch could finally be near because Thunderful Games on Twitter revealed that it will get a big reveal here sometime soon. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and guess that they're probably teasing a Game Awards announcement with possibly a confirmed release date. I know they previously said that it would release sometime in spring of 2026, but maybe they could narrow that down just a bit more at the Game Awards. Let me know, though, are you excited about Replaced? I think it's definitely one of those games that, because it's so gorgeous to look at, it immediately grabs a lot of attention. But for me, it really just kind of comes down to the execution. So what I'm going to say is that if it plays as good as it looks, then yeah, we could be in for a real treat. Now, speaking of Xbox, we do have a lot of news for them today, including an update for Forza Horizon 6. I mean, really, next year is going to be a fun time for the Xbox brand. It right now sounds like we will see Gears of War, Forza, Fable, and Halo for their 25th anniversary. But by the numbers, I think when all is said and done, Forza Horizon 6 very well could be their best-selling game of the year. I mean, that's kind of crazy to think about, but the Forza Horizon series has truly become a massive franchise with tens of millions of players. And I say all that because, obviously, there's a lot of excitement for it to finally go to one of the most fan-requested locations, being Japan. This game is going to be absolutely beautiful with that Japanese setting, and I think fans are going to be thrilled if the newest leak turns out to be true. And that's because we might get our hands on it sooner rather than later. Yeah, the wait's seemingly almost over because, according to Nate the Hate, which has definitely earned himself a great reputation for leaks, including his Xbox information. He was the first to leak Hi-Fi Rush and Sea of Thieves for the PlayStation 5, and now he says that he's been hearing the plan is to release Forza Horizon 6 in the first half of 2026. Now, with that said, I'm going to go ahead and predict that even if that turns out to be true, well, they're probably not going to announce it at the Game Awards. Now, I know a lot of people are going to immediately point to that event for this announcement, but I don't think that's going to happen, and here's the reason why. Instead, I think they're going to hold an early 2026 Xbox Developer Direct like they have in the past couple of years. Recently, they've used the month of February to reveal their yearly pipeline to just kind of set expectations for their fan base. And I think they're going to do that once again in 2026, but this time, I think it's going to be extra special because, again, it's the 25th anniversary for Xbox, and they do have some major plans for Gears of War, Forza, Halo, and maybe even possibly Fable as long as this stays on target. I mean, we very well could get a re-reveal for all of those games with updated trailers and release windows. I mean, talk about a great showcase on paper. That sounds absolutely amazing. So yeah, if you're an Xbox fan, early 2026 could seriously be very fun. As always, though, do make sure to subscribe, and I'll keep you up to date as we inch closer. Now, like I said before, it's been a big day for Xbox news, and that also includes their plans for the Nintendo Switch 2. So far, they've yet to make a big push on the Switch 2, which has drawn some scrutiny online. It wasn't all that long ago when Reggie Fils-Aimé said that he's been surprised by Xbox's absence on the Switch 2. But like I said then, I think that's more because of Nintendo than it is because of Microsoft. Now, the reason I said that, and the reason that I'm going to go ahead and repeat it here, is because it's pretty well known that for whatever reason, Nintendo has been a little bit stingy with their Switch 2 dev kits. It's been a slow rollout for third-party developers, and because of that, third-party support for the platform has been slow out of the gate, which also includes Microsoft. And I do feel like that's a bit strange on Nintendo's part, because you would think that Nintendo would be pressing for one of the biggest franchises in the world to be on the Switch 2, being, of course, Call of Duty. I mean, obviously, a few years back, they signed that Call of Duty 10-year contract as a part of the FTC versus Microsoft lawsuit, but so far, it really hasn't produced anything of substance. However, it's now been spotted that the Call of Duty developer Sledgehammer Games has been hiring for Nintendo Switch developers. So this is the first real piece of evidence that Call of Duty is in active development for Nintendo. Now, however, some people have pointed out that Sledgehammer Games isn't expected to be the next Call of Duty release. It's instead expected for 2027, while Infinity Ward is expected to release the next Call of Duty game in 2026. So even with this newfound information, we still don't really know for certain that next year will be the year of Call of Duty on Nintendo. It could still be 2 years away, which is kind of crazy to think about, but I will say this much. I would be surprised if we don't see a big Xbox push for the Switch 2 next year. I think there's a pretty good chance that the next Call of Duty will appear on the Switch 2. And then there's also other games like Sea of Thieves, Killer Instinct, Forza Horizon 5, and even the Master Chief Collection. All of those games have been rumored for the Switch 2, and I think all of those games, I mean, just from a business perspective, have a real shot at getting a port for the Switch 2, and for good reason. You know, they would probably make a ton of money by porting those games, and we all know how Microsoft likes that money, and I've said this before, but I'll just go and say it again. I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of Xbox belling out on their exclusives, because I am a big believer in competition. I want to see these companies compete in every possible avenue to the best of their ability. But at the same time, one thing that I do love about this strategy is that now, after all these years just of nonsense console wars, more people are truly seeing that, yes, Xbox does actually have some good games after all. I mean, they've always had this stigma that they don't have good games. The media certainly hasn't helped out with that, but that just never was true. And now people are actually seeing that firsthand because of this new multi-platform strategy. So in that way, I think Xbox is in a pretty decent position to truly be the biggest game publisher in the world. They are actually proving to gamers that, yeah, they do have some good games, and that's why they're selling pretty well on other platforms. Now, speaking of Nintendo, though, they had a surprise for Thanksgiving because they just announced a buyout. Yeah, usually Nintendo isn't big on acquisitions, but every once in a while, they like to invest into studios that they've worked with for a long time. And, well, that's exactly what they just did. They just announced that they're acquiring shares of Bandai Namco Studios Singapore for the purpose of strengthening its development structure. So in other words, Bandai Namco Studios Singapore will now become Nintendo Studios Singapore and help Nintendo develop new games. Now, for those that are wondering about this studio, they've actually been working with Nintendo for a very long time. They were the original developer for Metroid Prime 4 before it got canceled and moved over to Retro Studios. And while, yes, some people might think that that's a little bit alarming, well, not really, because this studio mainly functions as a support studio. In fact, they've helped out in games like Splatoon 3, New Pokemon Snap, and even Tekken 7 and Tekken 8. So my guess is that Nintendo will continue to use them to help out on various different games that are in active development. And that's important in today's world. Pretty much every big game anymore has help from support studios. I mean, I remember a few years back when people went crazy over the idea that Perfect Dark had multiple studios working on it. But if you look around, it's fairly common for AAA games to have help. And the reality is that Nintendo is now in an era that they're kind of unfamiliar with. For the first time in a very long time, they have a console that's actually very capable from a technical standpoint. And if they want to take full advantage of that, then it could potentially slow their development time down unless they get assistance from studios like Nintendo Studio Singapore. So honestly, I think it's very smart for them to invest into these type of support studios. PlayStation has been doing the exact same thing here in recent years. And again, there's a reason for that. AAA games just require a ton of resources anymore. They require a ton of help. And when you have these support studios in-house, yeah, I'm sure that makes development a lot smoother. Anyways, though, that's going to be it for this episode. But until next time, make sure to subscribe, ring that bell, and peace out.